Would you be okay if we used one of those little tables for you instead of that? So she could have her. Sure. Here you go. You just need to get a little.
Is this all right? Is this okay then?
Yeah.
So we're live now.
We're live now.
Daniel, are you going to be able to film my feet up? No. Okay. Where do I need to be?
I think that's just where they're going to be there. You might have to slide that over.
Okay. Is this the right place now? Or where do I want to end up?
She wants to be there. She's just marking herself.
Is this the right place? Back farther. It doesn't have to be, I guess, all the way down, but I was thinking
Just
that.
maybe a little bit farther.
Okay.
Just even a foot farther.
Right.
You know what we can do? We can help you pull this off.
All right, I think I can remember this is in line with here. Okay. Okay. Oh, not here right now? Okay.
We'll just.
Okay.
Welcome to the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, or ERUUF as we like to say. My name is Reverend Jacqueline Brett, and whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your race, your gender, whomever you love, we welcome you to this beloved community. We welcome you to this, our first live streamed service in light of all of the events happening in the world. We will be live streaming our services through the end of March. And during that time, we will also come to some decisions about what will happen past March. So please stay tuned. We always have a lot going on here at ERUUF, as many of you know. And so we will be moving all of those activities online. So please reach out to your group leaders, and they will give you information on how to get online and have your meetings or events online. And if you are having difficulty with that, if you are indeed a leader, please reach out to office@eruuf.org for information on how to get your meeting held through Google Hangouts and online itself. So let us all take a moment to center ourselves into this time, this incredible time, into the space that you are in this moment. Let's center our minds, our thoughts, our energies into a calm place of being, knowing that although we might be in a space separate, we are actually all together. And let us all take a deep breath in and let it out. Let us begin worship.
In addition to being a wonderful poet, the Reverend Lynn Ungar is also a Unitarian Universalist minister. She wrote the poem Pandemic just a few days ago, and it's already been widely shared. I'd say it has gone viral, but in this moment, I really don't want to be ironic. I want to lift up the profound truth and the beautiful vision that she offers us this morning. She says, "What have you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling, give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is.
Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life, centered down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now.
Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has come clear. Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart. Reach out your words. Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch.
Promise this world your love, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. We light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, for the light of truth and the power of love and caring, which are with us and always possible and are so needed in this time when the whole world has come together to protect the human family. Ashe.
We're going to sing here. We're going to sing Healing Circle.
Won't you come to
where we begin. The magic work of our feet. All alone in your room, you think you're the only one. You're thinking that you might be crazy. So take off all the pain and the shame deep inside. And your world is always dark and hazy. But won't you come to the circle? Listen to our tales. You will find you're not the only one who's hurting. And the light will shine in. This is where we begin. The magic work of our healing. You are not unimportant, we need all the words and the melodies to harmonize. The darker the shadows, the brighter the sun, and your tears are the stars in your eyes. Won't you come to the circle? Listen to our tales. You will find you're not the only one who's hurting. And the light will shine in. This is where we begin. The magic work of our healing.
Good morning. I'm Julia Tyler. I'm the Director of Religious Education here at the ERUUF Fellowship. And this past week, I sent all the families here a packet called Soulful Homes, a bunch of ministry material you can do with your families this week. And let me know if you didn't receive it, and I'll send it along to you too. This morning, we are thinking about the wisdom of leaning in. And our story is called Anansi and the Pot of Wisdom. This is a traditional story that comes from the Ashanti people of West Africa. And Anansi means spider in the language of Khan. And Anansi in this story is a man spider or a spider man. Now, Anansi was very clever, but he knew he was not very wise. And so he came up with a clever scheme to steal everyone's wisdom. So, excited about his scheme, he went door to door with this very pot and asked everyone for their wisdom. He was kind of surprised, but everyone happily gave them their stories, their proverbs, their good ideas, their knowledge, their wisdom, all of it. And he went door to door, and he collected so much. Eventually, his pot was brimming full of all of this wisdom. And so he took his pot home with him, very excited to be the most wise creature in all the land. But after a little while, he started worrying, what if somebody stole his pot of wisdom? And so he decided he needed to hide that pot. And so he decided he would take this pot up a very tall tree and hide it in the branches so that nobody else could find it and it would be all his. Well, can you imagine trying to bring this pot up to the top of a tree while you're trying to climb a tree? It was very difficult, and in fact, he couldn't do it. He kept trying, but he needed a couple hands to hold the pot, and he couldn't get up the tree, and he started feeling frustrated. And then his daughter came by and she said, "Dad, why don't you tie this pot to your back and then you'll be able to climb up the tree?" And in that moment, he realized that his daughter was very, very wise, and it was very fortunate that she shared her wisdom with him. And that helped him realize that wisdom is better shared with other people rather than kept for ourselves. So he did climb up that tree. He tied it to his back. He took this pot up to the top of the tree, and at the top of the tree, he dropped the pot, and it fell, and it fell, and it fell, and it broke on the ground into a million pieces. And guess what happened to all of that wisdom? Well, it jumped out of the pot. It actually grew legs and feet. It ran north and south and west and east. It jumped into people's backpacks, and it snuck under people's pillows. And everybody, every single creature, every human, every age, every color, every body got some of that wisdom. Nobody got all of the wisdom, but everybody got some of it, including you. I wonder what wisdom you have. I wonder how that wisdom has come and found you. So this whole month of March, we're thinking about wisdom, and you can think about how you find wisdom. What wisdom is out there for you? In the Soulful Homes packet, they have all sorts of ideas. You might think about finding wisdom in your own very own body, especially when you are still and quiet and you listen. There's a very, very tiny voice in there that if everything is very quiet, sometimes you can hear it. Something a little different than your own thoughts usually you can hear. A little tiny voice inside of you. You might also find wisdom out in nature, out in trees. This is a wonderful time to spend time outside, listening to animals and birds. Wisdom in nature, in reading, and in songs. You can find wisdom everywhere when you're paying attention. Thank you for joining me this morning, and I'll look forward to seeing you at ERUUF down the road when we're all healthy again. It'll be nice to be together again. All right, in the meantime, take care of yourself and everybody around you.
So we're in the middle of a quickly evolving situation, and we had some wonderful members lined up to come and talk to us about stewardship matters this morning and why ERUUF matters to them and why they pledge. Late last night, they got in contact and said they weren't feeling well, and they did the responsible thing, and we bless them. We say thank you for staying home when you weren't feeling well. That's exactly the right thing to do. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about our pledge drive, which we launched last Sunday, daylight savings time. Yes, it's true. We picked the best days to do these things, but it's already, we've had many people pledge online, and for this we are very grateful. And so that's what we're asking you to do, is to pledge online. And if you want to talk to someone, just let the pledge chairs know. The information is all on that pledge page, and that someone from the team will be in contact with you. Our theme this year is Grow, Care, and Transform. Even in these unusual times, we actually have online classes happening this morning. You cannot keep those Harry Potter kids away from their class. And so they're meeting, and OWL is meeting, and guess what? Our adult class is meeting online this morning. They organized that like that. And we're going to be working, as Jacqueline said earlier, to help any leaders who would like to help their groups get online. Well, we can help you set that up if you can't figure it out on your own. It's actually pretty simple, but we'll help. So we're figuring out how to do pastoral care online. And I think by some ancient technology called, what, phone calls? Is that how we're also organizing to be there for each other. So stay tuned, we're putting those things together. We are practicing social distancing, but we are not practicing spiritual distancing. We're practicing spiritual connection. And so it's just one of the important things we do, and we will continue to do. All of this is because our mission is to transform lives. And we know that when we show up in good times or in challenging times, we do that so that we can be comforted sometimes, but also at other times so that we can be stretched. And so I think this is a stretching time, and we are showing up, and I expect that it will change us. And I expect that if we open our hearts, it will change us for the better. We're hoping this year, our theme this year is each of us and all of us, and we are hoping for 100% participation. We know that people might be facing some financial challenges, and we're asking, though, for a pledge. That's an estimate of what you believe you would be able to do to support ERUUF in the coming year. 90% of our income comes from our members every single year. And so no pledge is too small, no pledge is too large. And so pledges of any amount are welcome. This isn't just a transaction. This isn't just about giving money. We know that if you sit down and think about your values and think about what in the world you value and what helps you express your values, giving is actually something that you can give to support the groups and the organizations that are doing that in the world. My family and I give to many organizations. We give a little bit to other organizations, a UNCTV size pledge to our other organizations. Generous but we try and be generous. We give most of our giving to ERUUF because ERUUF is the place that really deeply aligns with our values. And it's the way that we can't be everywhere, but we know our members are so many places expressing the love, the care, the support of this congregation, the commitment to justice of this congregation. And so that's why we give most of our money to ERUUF. We also do it, though, because it's made a difference in our lives. We have learned over the time, at first it was a little scary to give. At first it was challenging. Could we do this? We didn't know. This wasn't something that was easy at first for us. But over time, we learned that it got easier. And as it got easier, what we really found was that our lives got better. We got more secure. We became more confident. And we just felt powerful. Not over other people, but powerful in the way that we could put our values into action. What an awesome feeling. I want that for everybody here. It's not the amount. Whatever amount is right for you, that's the right amount. And so I hope that this year you'll join me and so many other people here at the fellowship in a pledge of support so that together we can continue to grow, care, and transform. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Todd Resley, and I'm a worship associate here at ERUUF, and very happy to be with all of you this morning, and happy to share a reflection with you. So I work in human resources, and it's my job to support company managers in doing the tough parts of their job. Today, we're talking about the wisdom that comes from our engagement with life. As I began to consider the moments in my life when leaning in has affected me, this experience came to mind. I got the dreaded text, "Come in." I felt my body go stiff, aching. I knew deep down I was not ready for the situation I was about to find myself in. One day, several weeks prior, I'd found myself arguing against, and the employee's manager arguing for, keeping him on the list. If we make an exception for him, is that fair to his peers who are getting laid off? The manager said. But he's still just 6 months past treatment. This could break his life apart, I responded. The next day, we would argue it the other way around. We both kept hoping the more we talked, the more we would get clarity on the right answer. But I soon began realizing the hard truth. There was no easy answer. No playbook, no decision tree. As the days leading up to the layoffs neared, the employee's manager was becoming increasingly unsettled. Then came the HR manager training, where the message was clear. Stick to the script. Do not get into any conversation around why the employee is being let go. Expect he or she may express a range of emotional reactions. The training did not sit well with me. It felt inhumane. So too when my leadership told me that HR was not expected to be in the room, though I realized I couldn't be in dozens of notifications happening simultaneously. So I had an out, but my gut told me I needed to be in this particular meeting. After giving the manager both options, we agreed he'd do it, but I would be next door in case he needed me. So I wasn't surprised when I got the text message. I'd heard through the paper-thin walls that the conversation was heating up. I tried to gather myself emotionally. It was my duty to manage conflict, to try to get all sides to calm down. I knew the business expected me to be the expert on all things human and emotions. As much as a small part of me wished I could turn away, deep down, I knew I needed to lean in. This was my calling. Immediately, I could tell the manager had followed the script per instruction. It wasn't working. Oh, wow. And now after 20 years of service to the company, they send in someone my grandson's age to ship me out, the employee exclaimed as I walked in the door. It's your generation who are replacing us old ones, he went on. And then, do you even know the least of what I've been going through? Do you realize that by laying me off, I won't be able to pay for the rest of my cancer treatments that I still owe? I was devastated. My mind raced back to the hospital room in high school, seeing my brother with tubes connected to all parts of his body for round 5 of chemotherapy. I thought back to the countless times the employee's manager and I had discussed his situation, but none of that could change the ultimate outcome. And so I didn't see how sharing it would do any good at all. In that moment, I started to cry. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, powerless and yet responsible, deeply responsible for how everything was playing out. Like someone had reached inside of my body and ripped out my core. I told myself more now than ever I needed to stay strong, but I could not. I sat there and listened to him speak. And then, without consciously realizing it, I started to go off script. I told him with tears racing down my face that I was truly sorry, a phrase the lawyers had advised against. It was only after I started to cry, in that moment of immense suffering and silence, I felt a spiritual and deeply human connection with him. All I remember after that was the employee's demeanor changed, and we ended up talking for a while, though I couldn't really tell you about what. I vaguely remember him sharing stories about key moments that stood out to him over his career. It was early on in my career I learned an essential lesson. I will grow and mature as I gain experience. I will learn new things and build new relationships. But I must never let go of my own values, nor hide away my own feelings. For they are my truth, and feeling compassion, leaning in on it, is the essence of what it means to be human. To close out on how this ended up playing out, we were able to get the employee's benefits extended, and he would tell me later this enabled him to retire from the company he loved and had given so much to without any ill will. Blessed be.
This morning, our words for meditation are adapted from the words of Clarissa Pinkola Estes. She writes, "My esteemed ones, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I would like to take your hands for a moment and assure you that you are built well for these times. Despite your sense of doubt, your frustrations in writing all that needs change right now, or even feeling you have lost the map entirely, you are not without resource. You are not alone. Even if your ego wants to contest the enormity of your soul, the smaller self can never for long subordinate the larger self. In matters of death and rebirth, you have surpassed the benchmarks many times. Believe the evidence of any one of your past testing and trials. Here it is. Are you still here? The answer is yes, and no adverbs like barely are allowed here. If you are still here, ragged flags or no, you are able. Thus you have passed the bar and even raised it. We are needed. That is all we can know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us, and we will know them when they appear. Help calm the storm. Do not allow yourself to be taken in a flurry of overwrought emotion or despair. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. In a stormy world, rise up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matters to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Let us sit for a moment of silence in the embrace of the light of our souls. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. May our souls be fully lit, and may we ever be willing to show it. Ashe.
To be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic in the nation. There is wailing the whole world around. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. For I am open and I am willing, for us, those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change.
At a meeting last week, the leader, a retired biologist, began the meeting with a quote from A.G. Riddle's novel, Pandemic. Riddle writes, "For the most part, we live in an uncomfortable equilibrium with bacteria and viruses, both those inside us and those outside in the natural world. But every now and then, the war reignites. An old pathogen long dormant returns. A new mutation emerges. Those events are the epidemics and pandemics we confront. They are the battles we fight." A.J. Riddle. Riddle writes fiction, but now we find ourselves in a very real battle with the virus that's already spread all over the world. Here today in Durham, it is eerily calm. We have made preparations and we're just waiting to see what happens. Meanwhile, we have begun to practice social distancing. You can safely go for a walk with a friend if you're 6 feet apart. And here at the fellowship at the end of the last week, in less than 2 days, we moved all our worship and meetings and some of our groups and classes online. 10 days ago, the thought of doing this, the need to do this, how we would do this, had never crossed anyone's mind. And yet, in 36 hours, it was accomplished. And this very morning, we have children's and adult classes that will meet online. And there you are at home, viewing this through the miracle that is YouTube. Yay for YouTube. We very quickly made this transition after obsessive reading about what experts said to do and why. And after many conversations with anyone we could find who was also thinking about these things in spiritual communities and how to do them. That is, we talked with a lot of local clergy and also with fellow Unitarian Universalist ministers who are nearby and also flung all across the country. We know that in this kind of crisis, people will need their spiritual community, and we intend to be here. I have to say, this would have been a lot easier if there had been better leadership from our nation's elected officials, our top elected officials, who themselves might have been better informed if they hadn't dismantled the office in charge of pandemics at the White House last year. At one point this week, my head ached from the effort of trying to make sense out of these incredible contradictions. On the one hand, that 80% of us are going to be just fine. And on the other, that officials are urging us to shut everything down. There was a big disconnect for me. And for the longest time, I just couldn't make sense of it. But it was all those conversations and then some clear information from the nightly news, including that graphic about flattening the curve that finally made the light go on inside my achy head. We're doing this in an effort to keep everybody from getting sick all at once, so that the healthcare system isn't overwhelmed by tens of thousands of sick people who need hospital beds and ventilators at the same time. Got it. Finally got it. What I've learned since is that we're also doing this to help lessen the terrible impact on healthcare workers. In Italy, doctors, nurses, and technicians have dropped from fatigue and also from the illness after carrying nonstop for a colossally overwhelming caseload. So now all of us are starting to know quite a lot about preventive measures that most of us probably didn't think about all that much, unless you are a kindergarten teacher or an epidemiologist. Stuff like how far liquid drops travel from an uncaught sneeze, and how long this particular virus can live on surfaces, and what kinds of things we might have in our bathrooms and our kitchens that can be used to kill it. Alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, bleach, and good old soap and water. We're starting to understand what to do if we get the virus. Stay home, drink lots of fluids, take Tylenol, only seek medical attention if you have a high fever or trouble breathing. When we're not sure what we're up against, or when for the first time we see the monstrous size of what we're up against, we get flooded with fear. It makes us want to fight. It makes us want to run. Sometimes it makes us freeze in our tracks. What's also true about fear is that it can make us do some very stupid, very selfish, very mean things. There is the physical suffering caused by the coronavirus, and then there's the suffering from fear of becoming ill. And this fear can cause us to fight with each other over small things like the perceived last roll of toilet paper, or large things such as scapegoating and stigmatizing whole groups of people who are suspected of bringing the disease. This disease is thought to have originated in China, and there are stories from reputable news sources that have reported random attacks against Asian people in the last couple of weeks. this can be the beginning of something much larger, we know. My colleague, Galen Gingrich, writes that as he got onto a New York City subway car, he saw a whole group of people clumped together in one part of the car and an Asian man sitting all by himself in the other part of the car. He didn't make any assumptions that there was any ill intent. He didn't know why they were doing that. He just noticed. But he reminds us that the Greeks knew that showing kindness towards strangers is one of the hallmarks of civilized society. This is actually true all throughout Middle Eastern culture. Kindness towards strangers means that you are civilized. Barbarians do not seem capable of welcoming the stranger, which is the basis not only of all those cultures, but it's also implicit within the golden rule. This is in our religions too. This is the wisdom that we know. Be good to each other. Be kind. Reverend Gingrich reminds us that civilization is a whole lot better than barbarism. And again, not making any assumptions, Galen took a seat near the Asian man, and then later at another stop, so did some other people. The question now is, can we continue to express our civility and kindness from 6 feet away? Lynn Unger says, promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. It's a promise that we can readily make when things are going well, right? But how do we remain faithful and do this under extreme stress? Good manners are a start. They're not some antique dance. They're not irrelevant. Good manners are like the oil that we squirt on our rusty interactions with each other. Good manners help us get past each other in civilized ways. We can also fulfill our promise even at a distance if we lean in with caring and compassion, which requires that we keep our hearts open to each other, which means that we have to let ourselves be vulnerable to pain and suffering. I so appreciate how Todd shared with us about a time when he had to professionally intervene in an impossible situation, one he had been opposed to from the start because he could foresee the devastating outcome. And now, here it was. And he still had to show up as a professional and as a leader. In that moment, he was able to stay connected to himself, his values, his humanity. And with that, he was able to be in touch with inner guidance that came to him from his experience of his brother's battle with cancer. Because he was in contact with his own fear and his own suffering and his own sorrow, he was able to be authentically present and compassionate with a terrified, furious person who had just taken a terrible hit. If we're unable to face our own suffering and sorrow, there's a danger that we'll experience spiritual distancing, that we'll be cut off, most of all, from our own compassion. Although I did not foresee it last week, I suddenly found myself face to face with my own fears of loss and death. Would the people I love come through this? Would I? These are difficult things to consider. And without even knowing it, I had pushed my fear way down deep. I didn't want to know. And let me assure you, this is not a matter of thinking rationally and clearly. I am highly in favor of rationality in its rightful place, but facing this kind of fear and sorrow asks something that's very different from thinking. It asks us to do something very different. As I struggled this past week, I was reminded of those medieval memento mori, which are those woodcuts that depicted death as skeletons that are dancing all around people who are going about their business. The purpose of these images back then was to help people face the transitory nature of life and then make virtuous choices so that they could enjoy life in heaven. Unitarian Universalists are among the religious people who focus more on the life here and now. If images of dancing skeletons happen to pop into our minds at odd moments, in our darker moments, if we're able to acknowledge them, we tend to understand them as something that's trying to get our attention, something that's urging us back toward a whole, a larger, more whole, more meaningful life right now, not later, now. It could be our unconscious, or perhaps it's a way that God or the universe is working through us. But the purpose is for our life now, most of us believe. Others, usually the mystics of other world religious traditions, have known that something is always calling us to a larger life, a greater wholeness. In the 13th century, the mystic Rumi said, "Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find the space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the boughs of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take their place." Thank you, Rumi. When we let it in, sorrow can actually clean our spiritual house. It can shake loose the rotten roots of our fear. It's only when we face our discomfort, suffering, and sorrow, though, that we're able to be loyal to our most cherished values and also to other people. We don't keep this pathway inside ourselves open and clear. We are in danger of betraying first ourselves and then other people. Fear is the root cause of tragedy. We can do unthinkably terrible things to each other because we lack the courage to love, because we close the door in our heart and we turn away from suffering and sorrow. The truth is, though, even when it doesn't seem like it in the short run, terrible things will happen to us as well as to others in the long term if we cut ourselves off from our own fear and sorrow. We have the power to choose to love and not to abandon ourselves or anyone else when we're struggling. It starts when we choose to lean into the struggle, to stay with it, to acknowledge it, to not walk away if we notice that we're not acting the way we expect ourselves to act. When we love, we naturally want what's best for ourselves and for others because we're infused with love. We each carry a little bit of the wisdom and the divine love and grace of the universe inside ourselves. Maybe Anansi, the trickster, put it there. Or maybe it's your experience that God put it there. Or maybe all of your study has proven to you that evolution has woven this into our DNA. It's a beautiful wonder and mystery, however it came to be. In that meeting last week, our group's leader was wise. She named this grim moment that we're living in, but she didn't leave us there. She also shared something that Fred, aka Mr. Rogers, had written. He said, "At the center of the universe is a loving heart that continues to beat and that wants the best for every person. Anything that we can do to help foster the intellect and spirit and emotional growth of our fellow human beings, that is our job. Those of us who have this particular vision must continue against all odds. Life is for service." Fred Rogers. Friends, if statistical models are correct, it's likely that our healthcare system is going to be overwhelmed. Our supply chains might be disrupted for quite a while. The most vulnerable among us are going to be affected the most. Sick people, and also homeless people, people on the edges of society, poorer people, they're going to take this hit the most. I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, we are going to have to help each other. We're going to have to help each other in ways that we have never thought about. It's likely to scare us. And when we're really scared, that's when we have a choice. We have the choice to turn away, or the choice to lean in with compassion, first for ourselves and then for others. When we lean in and face suffering and sorrow, we connect to the source of love and wisdom at our center, and also our strength, which enables us, of course, what else would we do? But it enables us to turn outward and serve and love others. When we find a way to lean in and dance with our fears in whatever ways they show up, we're better able to find our whole self, our true self, the self that the world needs in this moment. May this sacred dance of leaning in and turning back to serve ever be the dance we do. May it be so. Amen. Amen. So while the ensemble is, while the singers are moving back into place, this is a visual representation. You can see that ERUUF is practicing ministry in new ways in the midst of this crisis. Your steady support enables us to continue to be a source of spiritual and emotional and practical support for our members and friends. To make a gift online, you can go to our website's giving page, or you can click on the web address that is hopefully in the chat box on your screen. In these difficult times, I also want to remind you that ERUUF has funds to help our members in time of need. If you're an hourly worker or a small business owner and you find yourself unexpectedly in financial difficulty, you are not alone. ERUUF has a discretionary fund. Please contact any of the ministers. We'll work with you on ways that the fellowship might support you.
Whoa, way away. Whoa, way away. Whoa, way away. Whoa, way away. Someday we will walk 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 away. We'll walk the way of Jesus of Nazareth. Walk the way of Nelson Mandela. Walk the way of Mother Teresa. Walk the way of the Supreme Buddha. Walk the way of the Prophet Muhammad. Walk the way of the Dalai Lama. Walk the way of Muhammad Gandhi. Walk the way of Martin Luther King. Someday we will walk the way. 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 We'll serve the poor. feed the hungry. We'll house the homeless. We'll heal the lame. We'll bury the bones. We'll teach the children. Forgive each other and ourselves the same. Someday we will walk away. Someday we will walk away. Our only mandate, the prophets tell us, is create heaven right here on earth. Let no distractions ever compel us. We'll create heaven right here on earth. Someday we will walk away. Someday we will walk away. We'll walk away, 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 we'll serve the poor, we'll feed the hungry, we'll house the homeless, we'll heal the lame, we'll bury the bones, we'll teach the children, forgive each other, and ourselves the same. Someday we will walk away.
We give thanks for all the gifts that given so generously help to weave the fabric of this beloved community, virtually and in reality. We're going to sing together. We're going to sing Simple Gifts. It's number 16 in the Great Hymnal if you happen to have one at home, but you might know this from common sources. We'll sing.
Tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When through simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight.
For our closing words, we remember that Lynn Unger has said, Promise this world your love, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. And so, friends, let us too go in peace, determined to let our love spiral and replicate and dance in all the spaces between us and among us. In amid a world that's in spasms of suffering, may we be courageous enough to love. And because we're determined to keep our hearts open and clear, may wisdom, grace, and joy dance in the world. May it be so. Ashe. Amen.
Amen.